welcome to Crime Bytes, the show where we talk about some truly bizarre and disturbing crime cases. My name is Eliza, and I've got Detective Scoop Dog with me here. Today is True Crime Tuesday, so buckle up because today's case is still unfolding as we speak, and it is literally nightmare fuel, especially if you are a mother. But before we do get into that, we're going to pause for a quick promotion. And it is summer finally coming up here in New England. Finally, it's been a rough spring here, and got this little training shirt in the mail from Just Strong, and I am loving it, and it's perfect for these hot river walks that my son and I take with Scooty here. And it reminds me that I am just strong, and I really need that reminder sometimes, especially lately. And if you like this look and message, you can head to juststrong.com and they will give you an additional 10% off of your purchase with this coupon code. I'll leave that for you guys in the description as well. Thanks so much, Just Strong, and we are going to need to stay strong for today's case. And this case, like I said, is still currently unfolding. But we are going to start just a little over 2 weeks ago on May 30th of 2025. Whitney was sending her girls off for a visit with their father. It was a Friday night, and the couple had a court-approved parenting plan that was in place that they were working with. So his hours for tonight were from 5 to 8. Whitney and her ex, Travis Decker, had quite the history, and Whitney was doing the best that she could for her little girls with what she had to work with, but she was growing pretty frustrated with the system. The couple had met online, and from the time they met, they were inseparable. Travis was an avid outdoorsman, and he joined the Army in 2012 and did a tour in Afghanistan. From there, he would join the Washington Army National Guard, and he would hold the rank of sergeant. This is where he would meet Whitney. From there, the couple would get to spend 2 years together in Italy, which, wow. Then 2 years in Georgia, and then they moved to the Wenatchee Valley, which is where they were able to kind of settle down and have their 3 girls. I'm playing a little video compilation in the background so you can get a feel for the good times that the family had. Unfortunately, their marriage would begin to crumble in 2022. Allegedly, Travis would start neglecting his parental duties, and his mental health was really starting to become a problem. He was seeking help, but he was having trouble obtaining it, which Travis's mental health would just kind of keep going downhill. When he left the active reserves in 2023, it's actually reported that he was honorably discharged from the Army, but then kind of stopped showing up for the active reserves. He would do things like wake up covered in sweat and screaming, and he was ultimately diagnosed with PTSD and borderline personality disorder. He would initiate a divorce in 2023, and he would say like he didn't feel like he was worth it, which is really sad. They had been married for 10 years at that point. He would try and get help from the VA for his mental health and housing issues, but he couldn't seem to get past all of the red tape. Their divorce would go through in March of 2023, and they would receive a parenting plan, and Travis would receive court-ordered visitation as Whitney would receive custody of the little girls. She would say that he remained an active father and that they remained on good terms, but things did keep progressing and not in a positive way. Travis found himself homeless, and he was taking his girls to what was essentially, from what I gather, a homeless shelter. It was an armory for veterans, but still, when he wouldn't do that, he would plan on taking the girls on camping trips for their overnights, which I will say that does seem like a great idea in the right circumstances and conditions. It was a way they could work with the situation when the conditions were favorable. So that's creative, but overnights got limited in September of 2024 when the couple would go in to amend their parenting plan. Travis would attempt to represent himself, but his motion would not be heard because it was filed incorrectly. He was allowed to make arguments against Whitney's motion. Poor Whitney. She tried to keep track of everything. We lost our bacon. Whitney tried to keep track of everything going on to present it to the judge. So we do have a few examples in her words of what was going on that I will share with you. But she had to stay strong for her girls. Let me play a quick clip of them first so you can see how cute they are.
Nice.
You can't stop halfway, Evie.
There we go, Evie. Nice. Olivia. Okay, bringing it down. Bring it up.
No, put it back.
Bring it down.
On August 30th of 2023, she recorded that Travis didn't want the girls that weekend even though it was his weekend. She said the girls walk on eggshells because of how he reprimands the dogs. On December 19th of 2023, she recorded Olivia, her 3-year-old, FaceTimed me screaming and crying. Travis was nowhere in sight. Payton had to go find him and he was out with the dogs. Told me Payton was unattended in the armory with Olivia playing on the lie-down, pull-down machine and smashed Olivia's fingers. Wasn't comforting her. Olivia and Payton were crying uncontrollably. Come to find out they had been sleeping in the armory. So the armory was this place that he was bringing the girls sometimes on his overnight visits when he had them. It was basically a homeless shelter for veterans, and he wouldn't tell her either. It seems that she found out from her girls, and sometimes he would have to leave the girls to go to the store, or sorry, I should not say that. He should have brought them with him. He never should have been leaving them to go to the store or anywhere. So sometimes he would leave them there unattended to do whatever he thought he had to do. That was what Whitney was dealing with. On July 25th of 2024, Whitney recorded that he hitchhiked to my house and asked to stay in the basement with the girls 3 hours late. Said he could pick the girls up from the play, but he was hitchhiking, so the stranger would have had to pick them up. I'm sorry, this woman, from what I can gather, is literally a saint, but this is what she's bringing to the court, saying, I'm not okay with these things, which I think most of us can agree is fair. And it really seemed like she was trying to still grant him time when he could do it in a manner that was not endangering the girls. But from what we can see, and what she presented, that was not always the case. And it didn't help that Travis was up until then at least trying to actively get help, but it was not a favorable day for him, to say the least, in court. And although no one thought Travis would harm the children, his visitation and overnights got even more limited because of his current lifestyle. And he was ordered in that order to be evaluated for anger management and domestic violence, as well as to have a full psych evaluation done, but he did not start doing any of that. And that part right there is key, because that's when you stop visitation until it gets done. Anyways, Travis refused to sign his new court order, and the judge had to tell him that he could sign it or not, but it would be legally binding either way. He also had incurred thousands of dollars of unpaid child support at this point. The new parenting plan allowed Travis visitation every other weekend and had specific hours. On Fridays, he would take the girls from 5 to 8, on Saturday from 11 to 7, and on Sundays from 9 to 5. He was to keep the girls in Wenatchee Valley during these visits. When he picked them up, they chatted, and he was a little quieter maybe than he usually was. And the last thing he said was, "Hey, I'll see you at 8. And then 8 came and they didn't. And there was no call or text either, which if he was late, usually there was. And she just waited because that's literally all she could do. And finally, when she couldn't wait any longer, at 9:45, she would call the police and report the girls missing, but they didn't issue an Amber Alert for them. And Whitney is still upset about that, and we'll get into that a little more later. They didn't really do much that night except to try and get a feel for the situation and kind of go out and check different campgrounds for them because they really didn't think the girls were in any immediate danger from their father. It seems that the tone was that even if Travis was taking off with the girls, he wouldn't actually harm them. Because like I've stated, in spite of his questionable parenting choices due to his circumstance and lifestyle, it does seem that everyone who knew them thought that he loved his daughters and would never harm them. But it turned out that everyone was wrong. On the next day, there was a 5K race that one of the little ones was planning on running in, so everyone was just kind of holding out hope that they would just appear there and everything would be fine, and it would all just be kind of a misunderstanding, but that didn't happen either. So on Saturday, May 31st, a statewide endangered missing persons alert was issued for the girls. Still not an Amber Alert because, again, I read that the police and Whitney did want to issue it as an Amber Alert because that notifies everyone to keep an eye out, but it wasn't. It was only issued as sort of the next level down from that, the Endangered Missing Persons Alert, which is not broadcast to everybody like an Amber Alert is. And that was ultimately decided because of both his custodial rights and the lack of evidence for an abduction or any imminent danger. Which, I'm sorry, but at that point, clearly it was at least an abduction. No call, no show, no bringing my kids back within the parenting time. In what world is that not an abduction? Anyhow, at this point, the search was really on and they started looking for Travis's truck. It was a white 2017 GMC Sierra. When they looked it up, even his driving record showed indication of his downward spiral. On May 4th of that year, he had a small collision where he left the scene. It was reported, but there was no damage to the person that he collided with, and they declined to follow up on it. So a few days before this incident happened, he was in a second collision with this truck on May 27th. They would use highway cameras to locate the truck, and they did find it on June 2nd, and it was abandoned near Rock Island with his phone, wallet, and some food inside. There were 2 bloody handprints on the truck tailgate, and they would find his dogs near an abandoned campsite. They would notice zip ties and plastic bags just kind of around the vehicle. It looked like something went down. The site was just completely abandoned. So where was everyone? They would keep looking around the area, and unfortunately they would find 9-year-old little Payton, 8-year-old Evelyn, and 5-year-old Olivia in the forest. They were just a little past where they were supposed to be camping, and they were found asphyxiated. There was evidence that they had been zip tied and had plastic bags put over their little heads, which I don't want to get too much into that, but can you just imagine the sheer horror? Both of being murdered by the man you loved who's supposed to protect you, but also the 2 who he didn't kill first. And I'm gonna stop there, but seriously, what the hell? So the hunt is on because we have still not found Travis yet. He did acquire a cell phone on Saturday before this happened, and the records on that phone show that he traveled to this campsite on Thursday. So the very least, he was planning out their camping trip, at the very least. It also shows that on the 26th, so 4 days before this happened, he was searching how to relocate to Canada. He was also searching how to find jobs in Canada. So at the very least there, he was thinking about going to Canada, which was he planning on trying to flee to Canada with his daughters and maybe they resisted, or was he planning on annihilating his family and then restarting in Canada all along? I don't know. Rock Island is relatively close to the Pacific Crest Trail, which leads directly to Canada. Apparently, he also asked Whitney if they could try again, and she said no shortly before this happened. We don't know and we won't know if we don't catch Travis alive, but the evidence suggests that something snapped and made him decide to kill these little girls instead of just taking off and leaving them alone with their mother, who they loved and who loved them. Sources do say that he was trying to do things right, but was having a hard time with it, and I don't know. It looks like he was really fighting the family court. Like, maybe he did love his girls. I don't even feel okay saying that, though, with what he ended up doing to them, but what I see is he cared about his daughters because he's still trying, but he was in a way demanding his own way and not even willing to sign the court documents. He was representing himself as well, which, don't get me started there. I do try and keep my personal stuff out of these for the most part. I know so many others out there too with their own family court stories, and the family court is just, it's so hard because people abuse it. I've had a similar, not nearly close to as bad outcome, but similar experience documenting concerns just like Whitney, and a judge brushing me off and having to send my 3-year-old to situations that concerned me, until ultimately one of my ex's new friends was arrested for drunk driving with my son in the car. And then they started taking me seriously, and it was terrible. And that was almost 10 years ago, but my son could have easily been a casualty. By the grace of God, he's not. And my point is the system is broken. I'm just a story among any's, and this is the absolute worst that can happen. Yeah, but it's broken and it reacts to terrible things when they happen, but it has a hard time being able to prevent them. My personal opinion is it's because of people abusing the system and using it to play games with people, and it's kind of clogged up with nonsense. It's broken, but I'll drop that there. With Travis, I don't really see someone trying to do things right. I see someone who has an idea of how they want to do things right, not listening to what they are told needs to be done to make things right, which lines up with his borderline personality disorder that Whitney suspected he wasn't taking his medication for, which just makes that point that much more solid. He was going to do things his way. He was also trying to get work at a carpenters union, which he still had listed as his employment on Facebook, but apparently he did try it and it didn't work out and just kind of left that up there as his employment. And he talked about his wages being garnished due to child support and losing his dogs because of housing. So although trying to do things his way, he wasn't making headway, and things were looking like they weren't getting better anytime soon to him. And that's when sometimes people can make those unthinkable choices. But let's get back to the active manhunt at hand. Travis, like we mentioned, is a veteran with specialized training in wilderness and outdoor survival. He would just go and live off the grid for fun. One time even spent 2.5 months off the grid. He did a lot of geocaching as well, which is this cool activity I've always wanted to try, where you can go like looking for different things out on hikes. But it's completely possible that if he was pre-planning anything to any extent, that he stored supplies for himself at some location. Although most evidence does suggest that this was not pre-planned at all. There is a $20,000 reward for any information leading up to his capture, but it is also very important not to approach him, as he is considered armed and dangerous. If you do think that you see him, call 911 and do not approach him. Here are a few more pictures of him and his different looks if you're in the area. They had a lot of trails in the area shut down, but this morning I saw that they reopened them and passed the investigation off to the Border Patrol and the U.S. Marshals. Washington State Patrol is also patrolling from the sky with 2 Cessnas with infrared cameras. They encourage residents to reach out and stay vigilant. And that's gonna do it unless there is any more news at that end here. I do want to leave you guys with Whitney's GoFundMe. If this story touched you and you feel like reaching out and donating to the family, I will leave the link in my description. She is already working with her lawyers to raise concerns for changes for mental health services and resources for veterans. From where she's sitting, it seems like she feels that the system let her down by not giving Travis the help that he needed. And yeah, we have a lot of changes that do need to be made there. She's also working to raise concerns about the current Amber Alert system and the criteria needed to issue one. I completely agree with her there. And while I was going over this one, I thought, well, hopefully something good will come of this. It kept popping into my head, and at the same time, I am kind of someone who says something like that about bad things in life, but this is like next level. This is worse. This is worse than even a terrible tragedy. And just that thought kind of makes me sick. Like, this shouldn't have happened at all. And really the only person to blame is Travis. The system could have helped him maybe, but ultimately he made that terrible choice and it should not have happened. But now the question becomes, how do we prevent something like this from happening again? And there really is no easy answer. So I truly hope that Whitney's appeals to the court don't fall on deaf ears, and my thoughts and prayers do go out to her. Oh my goodness, he went through a whole nother bag this week. All right, guys, we gotta walk. We'll hop back on here if we do find him before Tuesday and talk about it. But if not, I'll be back next week. And until then, please stay safe out there. Bye.